To be honest, this match doesn't really mean anything to me. I'm joking.
CLG will tie with TSM as they look to fight them next week.
The rivalry probably stands the strongest for Biofrost.
Playing as Biofrost won't be a big problem because I know how he thinks. He has very glaring weaknesses in my eyes, and I know every single one of them.
I definitely feel like it'll be Vincent's chance to prove that TSM shouldn't have benched him.
Another big flank from Biofrost to start it off, and another teamfight victory for Counterlogic Gaming.
For Biofrost, was known for playmaking champions when he was on TSM. Biofrost in particular, huge game out of him.
Steam's picking up for this team, Kobe. The faith is restoring slowly but surely.
For me, it's important, at least for my career, because a lot of players after they leave TSM, they kind of fall off.
He has a lot of shot calling qualities to him too, so I'm kind of surprised that TSM kicked him out. I felt like he could have picked up what TSM said they wanted when they kicked him.
Of course, I think I've actually built a lot of good habits while in CLG in terms of my communication and team play.
Yo, we win this! We win this!
He got kicked off TSM.
Oh, go!
I want to win for him as well.
You should be willing to dive then.
Okay, I'll come pop then.
I'm going. Yo, I can go mid. I can go mid.
We haven't shown recently that we're better than TSM, so we really have to win this match.
Hello and welcome back, everyone, for this rivalry bout between TSM and Counterlogic Gaming. Before we jump into things, we're going to go ahead and look at the starting lineup. Selecting the blue side, it's TSM with Haunter in the top lane, Mike Young in the jungle, Bjergsen mid, Sven and Mithy bottom and support, and Coach Song. And on the red side, it is Counterlogic Gaming. In the top lane, Darshan. In the jungle, Rainover. In mid lane, Huhi. Bottom, Stixay, and support, former TSM member, Biofrost. Coach Zix is going to be on stage with them, prepping them for the draft as well as the early game strategy. And that is one thing that CLG have actually executed pretty well on. And fans are ravenous for each of these teams who came out of the offseason with such high expectations to bounce back by defeating their rival and getting a momentum boost. For TSM, it's about shaking off that barren steal from yesterday and putting more focus on closing out the game. Ooh, yeah, these two teams, this is actually the oldest League of Legends rivalry in any history of any region. These are two of the first teams that were ever created. And both of them have gone through their ups and downs. Recently in the North American LCS, yes, the Baron Steal yesterday. Baron Steals are one of the worst feelings for junglers. Mike Young also had a dragon stolen from him, and the pressure is already on Mike Young as one of the younger members of this roster. So there definitely is tremendous pressure there on his side. And it's not just the rookies feeling this pressure. Yesterday, Darshan seemed really trigger happy, which resulted in a couple of misfires of his own. Darshan, yeah, and the rest of CLG as well. I mean, they played around a top strategy where they drafted the Camille for him, they had an Aurelion Soul for roaming, and they put jungle pressure up there. They were not able to translate that, and they did show one of the things that CLG have also been struggling with, which is communication. It's one of the themes that a lot of the members of all of the teams in the North American LCS have kind of struggled with in the early stages of this season. But now we're into the champion select here. Pretty standard band except for a lot of mid lane focus. Oh yeah. And of course the extra Aurelion Soul added in there because of who he, main champion that people have really feared from him throughout the years. 5 of 6 bans targeted towards that mid lane. Aurelion Soul, Ryze, Azir, Talia, Zoe, all taken off the table. Camille, the lone outlier of that mid lane prioritization, also going to be banned away by TSM as they first pick the gangplank for themselves. Not surprised at all to see that. Counterlogic Gaming's response will be Kalista and Sejuani. You mentioned the gangplank. Haunter has been one of the best gangplanks that we have seen here, continually getting through the early game without a deficit even, sometimes even with the lead, so very impressive performances from him on that carry champion. However, we have also seen people run quite a lot of answers into the gangplank. Yes, the Vladimir can be more of an answer and try and have AoE for team fights, but we've also seen people go after diving a gangplank early. Camille into it, try and kill him early, people taking ignites, and that might be an option for CLG. They've stacked up some pretty standard lockups here though. Kalista taken for Stixay. He had
a good performance on that. They got one of their victories there, Reignover on the Sejuani. This is pretty much the premier jungle champion. Everyone wants this as a tank for their front line, and it is going to be the Vladimir option for the Gangplank matchup.
Vladimir picked into the GP yet again. TSM grabbing that Galio in the mid lane for themselves. We've seen this champion be very, very effective. Not to mention, he built a lot more AP these days than he used to. So it's not just Bjergsen filing himself into more of a supportive role. He's going to have some real damage potential on this champion here as well, along with the ability to protect his team and make those roams. But going into the second part of the bans now, let's see where the teams want to focus, with Ornn being the first ban for CLG.
Well, if you take into account the first 3 picks, TSM are showing those double globals that we're used to seeing in the current meta right now. Galio is so highly prized, plus the Gangplank, so there is that cross-map pressure. Whereas CLG, whenever you see even just the Kalista, even without the support locked in, that means so much potential for playmaking on the bottom side of the map. Whereas the Vladimir up on top side can just go, farm for farm. So now it looks like there is a lot more focus on this support role here. CLG banning out Rakan, which actually is a very good combo with the Kalista. So that's an interesting thing. They'd rather have it denied from TSM with the Galio combination than first pick it themselves in the second round, because they do have the option now. It's their first pick in second round. They could have gone for that combo. Not going to be the case though, and Stixay here hovering over to wait what we will get. Warwick is his favorite champion, by the way.
He did the
That's
wrong
why he
meme
always
champion there for a second.
hovered.
He hovered Volley Bear for 1 second because he misclicked. Has to make sure he's got those champion select mechanics down so he can hover the right pick. But now they will lock in that Alistar for themselves. You talked about Rakan being a great combo with Kalista, but Alistar's just a big old bowling ball you can throw right into the enemy team, knock them all down, or rather up at the same time. Very, very effective combo with those two.
I'm a huge fan of the champion right now. Also very good for roaming around, and Biofrost has talked about specifically working on his communication and his roaming. So we'll see if he gets that on display during this game. When you have a Kalista though, it's always nice to be tethered fairly close. TSM answering very quickly. Team fight power with Taric and a defensive, very safe AD carry in the Ezreal. We've seen him be so popular. And actually he's
locked in here. TSM's composition is so hard to make a move onto. You've got a Taric ult, you've got a Galio ult, Jax, Ezreal can both E away. You've got Gangplank with the oranges as well. So many defensive tools in this composition, Kobe. You have got to come at these guys correct if you want to actually get a kill.
And it seems like they're drafting into the style we've seen from TSM. While they do have a lot of defensive and counter-engage options you talk about, the engage for themselves and the offensive proactive tools are a little bit limited. You can use Gangplank ultimate for slow and then have like a Jax jump in to start off the Galio and chain that way, but it's not quite as forceful. Meanwhile, Counter Logic Gaming, they have also locked in the Fiora mid, which is a Huhi special. He was one of the first to bring it out mid in answer to tanks in the mid lane, specifically here into Galio. See if he can get his true damage procs off, and that does require some extra vision around the mid lane. I'll be very curious as to Reignover's early route. They have been planned out very well, thus far in this season, and CLG had run into problems in the mid stages where they started getting over aggressive, and you could see some discord maybe in their communication where they weren't quite on the same page.
I mean, we talked about how both these teams, people were excited for their off-season changes. People were really pumped up on both of these squads, saying, oh yeah, really want to see what they're doing in spring. It's going to look great. These guys are going to be at the top of the ladder. And right now, they're both sitting on a 3-4 record. If you lose this game, you don't get to have a positive win-loss record.
Take a moment.
At the halfway point.
The comforting chants. I love these dueling chants. Heard them for years. CLG and TSM fighting once again.
The crowd's hyped up. They're ready to go. A tale as old as time, a song as old as rhyme. TSM and CLG going head-to-head once again on Summoner's Rift. The oldest, one of the oldest, if not the oldest rivalry in competitive League of Legends. Let's see how it plays out this time around. CLG, you heard from them before this champion select, before this game started. They're hungry for the win here. They feel like it's been too long since they last won this match.
All right, well, Fiora, is going to be able to get the Bandit passive usage. Fiora does like to go for the auto trades there, getting Qs, and we talked about hitting Vitals on Galio. It also means that since I was talking about, mid lane pressure from the jungle, Reignover, as a jungler, when your laners have the Relic Shield, either your solo laners, it's often very beneficial to make your gank pass or even just warding visits during a cannon minion wave, because then Huhi can give over a couple stacks there, a little bit of extra gold, and even heal you up a bit, since you got it anyways for the trading.
Yep, if it's there, you might as well go for it. And at the end of tonight's broadcast, Kobe's actually going to be joining Freak and Azael for NALCS tonight, and they want to hear from you. So tweet at them using your NALCS hashtag. Give them your questions. Let them know what you want to know about the North American LCS, and they will do their best to answer those questions. But for now, the question on all our minds is which one of these two teams will prove superior here today. Reignover starting at his red buff. Mike Young will be doing the same. And I want to talk about Mike Young a little bit more here, Kobe, because you mentioned how this guy has been under a lot of scrutiny in general just because he is the rookie on this team of otherwise very well-established names. And yesterday he had a very poor performance overall, losing 2 different smites, not to an enemy smite, but to an enemy Ezreal.
Yeah, I mean, anytime we get people piling on junglers about those missed smites, there's multiple things to take into account. We can talk about it because the early game's a little bit slow, but there are things that your team should be doing to give you the best possible chance. Of course, blocking skill shots like Mystic Shot is definitely one of them. Zoning off the enemy junglers is definitely another one. But one of the things that was also on display was comboing his smite with his damage in his kit. He was trying to get the E auto attack damage proc with Sejuani, and that did cost him a couple times. But you got to shake those things off.
Yep.
I've missed many smites myself, and you can't dwell on the ones you have missed. You got to keep taking them and keep doing all the things that you can possibly do to limit the enemy's options of stealing it. And one other thing we can touch on while we're talking about junglers, we saw both of the bottom lanes getting to lane around the same time. CLG's bottom lane was fake leashing, though, because Reignover did start on the top side, and so they didn't want to give any extra information away as to his whereabouts, so he's made an early move down bottom with Biofrost, who's roamed into the enemy jungle to get some super deep vision onto the Krugs and start tracking Mike Young early, often.
Now, the problem for Reignover here is the most he's going to get out of this deceptive pathing is just a ticket for those Krugs. Because his opponents are so far underneath the turret, he can't really make much of a play down here, so he'll just have to settle for stealing that 1 Krug away and then escaping back over the wall, heading towards the Scuttle Crab now himself to grab that level 4 point. Darshan versus Haunter here in the top lane, the Gangplank Vladimir matchup that we've spent a little bit of time talking about in the previous matches. Gangplank just happy to farm up with those Klepto procs. You're going to be seeing the Ezreal for Sven, as well as the Fiora for Huhi doing the same thing. That Rune, despite the nerfs, still remaining very popular on champions that are able to enchant their auto attacks.
And it's interesting, too, because the nerfs were a little bit hard to decipher for people. It wasn't blanket nerfs. It actually, people who didn't proc it constantly, like Ezreal and Gangplank were pretty much the best use cases of it because they could spam out abilities, on cooldown and also proc it with, autos or the Mystic Shot counting. People who weren't able to use it as frequently, the randomness of the procs was, and the value was taken down a little bit. So people who were pretty bad at proccing it actually got a slightly better case now, but not that big of a deal, not too important. Darshan actually goes in for a full trade here, gets the second empower on the Q. Nope, not going to get in there for the second one, but is able to push Hanser all the way back for his recall and maybe force out this teleport. We'll see if he just walks back to base. Darshan trying to shove.
That would have been a good trade if he could have got that second empowered Q, but sadly the transfusion cooldown a little bit too high at those early levels. Couldn't make that go just yet. Haunter TP's back into the lane, has the Sheen, and this is where a lot of people complain about Gangplank's lane just becoming unanswerable. Because he's got the Sheen, he's going to constantly spam you on cooldown, pressing those Qs. There's no way to dodge them or really deal with them. He continues to proc Kleptomancy, and that's where the farm storm starts. Yeah. I had to make sure I said that without tongue twisting myself.
Flame was a really good example of the Gangplank Vladimir matchup. And the the game we just had earlier today. Doing quite well for himself. Meanwhile, though, Darshan trades his Ignite out for a teleport. Didn't go for the early kills. And Darshan will also teleport back to lane. He does have the advantage of still having the Summer Spellbook, as well as the Cosmic Insight for the reduced cooldown on that teleport. So even though he uses a little bit later, it's actually going to match up. Reignover is bottom side currently. He's waiting for the minion wave to move past that little opening, by the way. You could just see that little opening there. The Fog of War goes back when the minions pass through it, and he didn't want the minions to give away his position. Now, you can track that by watching your own minion line as it passes between your secondary and first turret as well, because the minion lines match up, even if you don't have vision on the enemy minions.
Good tip for anybody out there trying to make sure they don't get exposed when invading the enemy jungle. Exactly, tap the side of the head, gotta have that knowledge there. Darshan continuing to farm up here in the top side, going for that Proto Belt. Gangplank going for the Trinity Force. Very standard stuff up here, never really any reason to deviate from those well-established builds. Mid lane 54 to 62 in terms of the farm, so Bjergsen slightly behind in terms of that economy growth, but that's what you would expect considering he did get counterpicked by that special who he picked with the mid lane Fiora we were talking about. Mike Young farming up his own jungle. Now he is going to be spotted here by this ward as he picks up this red buff, so CLG is going to be aware that he's got that for himself. Likely could make something happen if given the opportunity here with the Jax.
Yeah, CLG have been putting a decent amount of effort in getting those deep wards down and tracking Mike Young, but it hasn't resulted in Reignover really getting a substantial lead or being able to outmaneuver Mike Young that much. He's barely ahead, got that one camp, and so he is level 6 first, so it does matter for the time being, but if Mike is able to just pick up his Raptors or something, and it will equalize. Currently, though, Reignover has the level 6, so he has his Sejuani ultimate, and he might be looking to use it. Right now, he's using it to just invade on the blue.
And I like comparing the difference in the ultimates between these two champions, because Jax by no means has a weak ultimate. It's great for tanking up. It's very strong in terms of dueling and just trading in general and fighting for an extended period of time. But if you're looking at what makes an impact in a gank, the Sejuani ult goes much, much further in terms of setting something up and allowing a play to happen. So even though they've both crested that 6 point now, I'm still looking at Reignover to have the edge from hitting that mark.
And I would say especially around mid lane, Sejuani ultimates can be very effective with how close you can get due to the side brush there and the extra Fog of War and the multiple angles you can go at a double melee matchup. That would definitely be a prime target for Reignover and Huhi to try to capitalize on. If you take out the Galio, then you also remove the threat of the side lane presence of the Galio. So that's why we see a lot of control wards being spent around mid lane, and both of the junglers trying to keep that extra vision around the mid lane. They definitely have that in the backs of their minds. The other option would probably be bottom lane, because we have that level 6 of the Kalista playmaking we talked about. And in combination with Alistar, that could definitely be explosive.
Plus, both top laners have get-out-of-jail-free cards in their Ws.
Yeah, that's a no-fun lane.
Yeah, it's exceptionally difficult to gank that crap when they're just going to cleanse all the CC or turn into a puddle of blood and slither away. Makes everything difficult, makes it so the jungler feels bad about having to gank that one and blow summoner spells and get the passives out. Life is hard sometimes, but bottom side, 2 versus 2, not really leading to anything just yet. 80 to 84 in CS. These guys just going blow for blow with each other. And both these teams, Kobe, seem so content right now just allowing this game to passively progress. 15.4 to 15.2 thousand gold, and that's actually one of the criticisms that TSM have fallen under so far this split, is that they're playing very passively. They seem to just let the game happen around them almost, as we see them just be comfortable scaling into infinity.
And some of that can come to, drafting for later in the game and stacking runes like Gathering Storm and stuff, and everyone playing more towards later, and that being very common in the meta and being a solid strategy. And some of it can also come from, communication that we've talked about. But it's so difficult to know, right, the inner workings of these teams and what the communication is like, even though sometimes things on screen may look like they're going the wrong way or they were indecisive in a call. It could be due to somebody else, but definitely is a valid criticism to bring up. This time around, though, I think, with an Ezreal trying to stack his tier in the bottom lane versus a Kalista Alistar, TSM definitely pretty happy with a slower-paced early game. Yep. Even though they do have the Galio for kind of insurance plan, it would definitely be risky.
Talking about the Galio, specifically into this Fiora matchup, one of the biggest things about Fiora ever since her rework is the riposte, right? I think in terms of basic abilities, non-ultimate abilities, it's one of the single most impactful ones in the game. The difference between using it right and wrong in a 1 versus 1 just completely decides the outcome of the 1 versus 1, and Galio's abilities are so telegraphed, you can't do it wrong.
Very true. We'll see if he's able to have correct timing in this game. It's funny with Jax as well, because it's kind of a guessing game, because he gets to cancel it.
Yeah, that's a fun minigame.
There is a window on it, though, and you can try and shrink that window. Well, yeah, meanwhile, Jungler is clearing out any sort of vision that even got remotely close to across the river. CLG still have a slight advantage with their ward onto the Raptors, and they can assume that Mike Young still on top side after clearing that ward. They know he can't have gone far.
Bjergsen pushes out the wave, gets himself away, has the Rod of Ages up and running already now at 11 minutes into the game, so that one will be fully stacked by around the 21-minute mark. And honestly, it might be that long before we actually see something really go down here. Both these teams continuing to farm up, continuing to play safe. 109 to 113 farm in the bottom lane, 117 to 126 in mid, 78 to 75 in the jungle. Not even a full camp separating those two champions in terms of what they've farmed up for themselves. Proto Belt done on the Vladimir now. 3 pieces of the Trinity Force assembled for Gangplank. He just didn't have the cost to grab the duct tape and put them all together.
Meanwhile, we had sounds of a Gangplank ultimate far off. It's going to be easier for the wave clear, but Darshan continues the pressure, and he's slowly whittling away at this turret. And that really is going to be the first one to take a move. It should be Counter Logic Gaming. They have the Kalista Alistar. Blade of the Ruin King is completed. Even though there's an Iceborne Gauntlet with the extra armor here for Ezreal, where Sven is able to rush it, still should be advantage CLG as far as early playmaking, especially since Gangplank Ultimate is now down. That is a decent window in the early game. Slightly longer cooldown, and so that's why we're seeing Rain over a path down to the bottom side. They really want to try and make use of the playmaking they have.
Baiting with that Tracker's Knife, getting those deep wards down right outside the vision radius of the tier 2 turret in bottom lane, as well as that brush right next to the Raptors there in the jungle of Mike Young. Dashing over the wall now, starting up that Mountain Drake. And Kobe, if this does turn into one of those late game, one of those 50, 60-minute types of games, the Mountain Drake is going to become exponentially more important, as it is so critical for those late game objectives and pushes.
And since all the objectives are still up in this game too, it could be a deciding factor in, say, a race for first turret bonus gold. A lot of those still available right now. Darshan had been working on the top turret, and it will help out there a little bit as well. But whenever you have kind of that bottom lane, you do assume that objective control for the first Drake should go over to that side. They played a lot of time, getting those super deep wards down, and CLG are able to claim that Mountain Drake.
It's a game of inches. Just take any little advantage you can find for yourself. That's the name of the game right now. Darshan continuing to farm up here in the top side. Has the cooldown boots, has the Proto Belt, wants to hit that 40 CDR point so he can spam these abilities and be super effective with those rotations once the team fights finally do start. When the team fights do start, I'm especially going to be keeping an eye on Biofrost. We saw so much of the conversation around him going up against his old team, right? Wanting to prove to TSM, you shouldn't have benched me. There's a statement he wants to make here.
That is a statement that he's been working on quite a long time. It could come into effect on the bottom side. Darshan now sees the 3 top side members, so that means CLG and Biofrost know that bottom side, they are free to push down the turret and dive anyone who shows up. Gangplank Ultimate is used to clear out most of the minions, and the last one does go down as well. We'll see if this one is going to be the difference in that first turret bonus gold. Minion wave of their own is disappearing as Darshan was able to Hemoplague and get out some AoE as well. That Mountain Drake actually might mean the difference.
Oh, this is going to be close. First turret destroyed by
Damn.
TSM. just barely manages to get it before CLG will in the bottom part of the map there. The ulti from Hanser buying those critical few seconds.
Very close, and some bonus gold goes over. Now TSM actually going to move right down to the Rift Herald as well to pick up the secondary objective. That would be quite nice in helping them counter some of CLG's map movements here, because then you get the extra pressure, get that outer turret gold earlier in the game. But CLG don't want to let them have it for free. Darshan and Huhi collapsing. They're too late, though.
TSM already got what they came for. Now they can just get out. I mean, Sven's the guy who's a couple of feet behind everybody else, but when you can just jump over the wall, there's no threat of an engage. So TSM coming out on top right now, up a little over 1,000 gold, 16 minutes in. CLG will continue to just farm themselves up, though. They've got some scaling power. I mean, you've got the Vladimir, you've got Fiora. Big damage threats from both of those as the game goes on, but when you're up against something like the Gangplank, you've also got to respect that.
And something to touch on, since that was so close in CLG getting there to contest a Rift Herald, strategy revolving around taking a Rift Herald is you want to have someone start it as quickly as possible, because a lot of the damage in the early stages of taking Rift Herald comes from popping the eyeball and getting that true damage. The overall health pool, the damage that you're dealing to it early on in the game as an individual champion isn't the highest percentage compared to the amount of those true damage procs you can get from the eyeball. So it's good for TSM to immediately send Mike down there to start it and get those eyeball procs rolling, because they are on a timing window. And then they were able to collapse with the rest of the team to ensure that he finished it out as well. CLG, though, now trying to move on the top side. They've sent their duo lane back up here, and they also had Rainover up there, but bottom side, another play. CLG trying to pull off 2 plays cross-map at the same time with leaving nobody mid. That could mean TSM push straight up the mid lane, but Hanser having to run.
Huhi wanting to make the play, going for first blood here. Hanser taken very low. Huhi looking to proc that vital, but stopwatch will stop him in his tracks.
Nice defensive use there, and they do get a lot of value out of it. This is with a counter we were talking about with Rift Herald. They make CLG pay for it, but teleport!
All right, Biofrost on the front lines, looking to make this happen. Maybe Tarek ulti coming down. Bjergsen and the rest of TSM trying to make their retreat. Huhi wanting to make a statement here. Riposte going to be used. Stopwatch from Bjergsen. That's 2 stopwatches so far, but first blood for CLG. Huhi's going to drop in retaliation. Mike Young stopwatching on his own. Hanser into the back line here, looking to drop those barrels. Biofrost taken low. Hanser now has to retreat. Rainover also taken incredibly close to death. Mike Young will smack him down, as now Mithy trying to get himself away. Darshan is killed by Sven, and it's a 3-for-2 for TSM.
Oh, what a scrappy mid lane fight right there. And this is TSM versus CLG still continuing. Sven might chase him down.
Sven wants to go after Stixxay here. Blast cone over the wall, getting himself out of the range of the Mystic shot. The fight finally ends. Edge to TSM.
Everybody pulling out all the stops and all the stopwatches in this little skirmish, going right back in and trying to use those invulnerabilities. And it all started with the bottom lane play where Huhi goes for the tower dive onto Hanser. And they are able to get out a decent amount of cooldowns, thus going for the teleport play in mid lane. But what an answer from TSM to fire right back. And even though CLG got bonus gold for first blood, TSM get the extra kill in the end.
All right, one more look at how all this madness happened.
All right, so it's the double teleport from the solo laners that were bottom lane from CLG. Hanser completes his recall. Then he's going to teleport in after the Tarek ultimate buys some time for TSM. But here's try number 2. Huhi going for it again.
There's no second stopwatch, by the way. That mastery procs once and once only. Huhi finds himself a solo kill.
There it is.
The fans are loving it.
The CLG split push takes effect. Huhi finds another kill. But remember, TSM are the ones with the gold lead in this game. The extra turret destruction for themselves, as well as the extra income here. So we'll have to see if they're able to move up around this next Ocean Drake. This should definitely be contestable, and the groundwork is being laid right now in those wards. Rainover tried to get some vision for CLG, but TSM with a little bit more room to work with.
TSM has themselves a nice 3,500 gold lead. It doesn't seem like they would. Let's see how Huhi got that kill, though, on to Hanser.
Yeah, just slips over the wall right there. TSM had a lot of vision around mid lane, but not in the side lane for the push. And even after missing that riposte you talked about being so influential, It did cut off the exit pass for a second, so even though it doesn't hit, you know, kind of corrals him there for long enough for Huhi to catch up with his ultimate speed, and as you know, finishes off the kill. There's that objective, that Ocean Drake for TSM though, as they were able to collapse.
Mike Young getting that for his team. Pretty easy to solo it down when you're a Jax and you've got a couple of the components of that Trinity Force. We do see him going for more of that traditional Jax style build as opposed to the pure tank that you do sometimes see these days. CLG backing themselves back out now, sitting on top of a control ward, but I doubt they're going to find anything. Haunter may find himself in yet another spot he wishes not to be. The grand challenge is issued through a post, is well timed. Huhi, one more lunge will do it, straight through the heart, and Haunter falls.
Huhi attacking the top laner of TSM. He's split pushing now. He's got the blue buff as well. And the rest of the squad, Biofrost is on the ward, but the rest of them slipped into this controller. TSM just recalling anyways, though, so won't be any sort of surprise here. But the 1v1s going in favor of Counter Logic Gaming. That means the pressure on mid lane also going to go in favor of Counter Logic Gaming. With the recalls from TSM all synced up, Stixxay gets a decent amount on the turret, but nobody else lending any damage.
Solo kill me once, shame on you. Solo kill me twice, probably should keep track of where that Fiora is at next time. Haunter's gonna have to really respect what this guy can do. He's got the Ravenous Hydra, he's got the Cleaver, he's got the Tabby. That's the kind of build that's gonna make life hard for Gangplank.
And we need to emphasize how impressive that is, because CLG just split pushed twice and got those kills twice against a squad that has a Galio on it. You would think that the Galio ultimate from Bjergsen would deter a lot of this, but Huhi is going for these when, well, I'll have to rewind it, but I would think that they had vision of Bjergsen to see that he was out of range of the Galio ultimate. Otherwise, that is definitely something that they would want to use to make that counter happen.
Still about a 3,000 gold lead for TSM though. Despite those couple of solo kills, it's not doing a lot to impact the overall state of the game. It's really only giving them the 300 gold that Haunter is worth on kill. They haven't been able to get any objectives or any big other leads from those kills. So for CLG, they've still got a bit of an uphill battle to fight here. TSM maintaining that control, continuing to farm up well. You've got your Morello Nomicon now completed onto Bjergsen, which is going to be important against the healing of the Huhi ultimate, against Vlad in general, against Kalista in general with the Blade of the Ruined King. That item could be the difference between getting a kill or not.
Very true. And the stacking items that we talked about for TSM and why they, in the early game, they were okay with kind of a bit slow of a game. You know, Muramon has been completed. The 10 stacks of Rod of Ages are there for Bjergsen. So TSM much more willing to take those fights now. They do have a very kind of timing-based team fight here with the Taric ultimate, Galio ultimate. There's a possibility for big combo plays for them that CLG also have to worry about, even though they have two split pushers ready with teleport. TSM looking for that opening.
And in the 1-3-1, your job as the 3 is to not get killed. That's the bottom line.
And the strategy is totally different for these two teams. As we talked about in Champ Select, you know, TSM, the offensive uses of the Galio ultimate are a bit harder for them to come by. They have to be sneaky to get, you know, Mike Young deep into enemy territory, get him into position. Jax isn't the best at delivering a Galio target. Does have the leap strike, but it's not super long range or anything like that. They're much more of a defensive-oriented squad here, and CLG would rather just draw them out apart and split push them than play into a Taric Galio AoE giant wombo 5v5.
I like the decision from Haunter to grab the Executioner's Calling here as well, shut down some of that healing that we were talking about that could be so prevalent in the team fight from CLG. Wants to make sure that not only in the split push is he shutting down some of the Fiora regeneration, but...
Or Vlad.
Or Vlad, yeah. Whoever he goes up against, that healing reduction is going to be so critical. So I really like this pickup coming out from him early on.
They're going.
Now Mike Young goes in. Stixxay nearly instantly killed, getting himself back as Mike is taken low. Reignover's taken down, and TSM is taking a one-way trip towards Baron. Enemy jungler dead. Enemy AD carry incapacitated.
Mike is very low, but they do have an Ocean Drake healing him back up right now, as well as Mithy spamming heals on him. And just as we say, Jax has a bit of a difficulty engaging those fights, and it's a little difficult to find the priority targets back there. Mike finds the leap strike right onto Stixxay with a huge burst of damage, and TSM got their engagement they were looking for.
Oh boy, here we go. Baron started up. Darshan The man who wants to try to stop this coming around from the side. Baron down to 2K. TSM wants to just finish this one off, but Biofrost, the man on a mission, is not able to stop them in time. The Baron is secured, and CLG is quickly routed. TSM with a big game-changing play.
CLG tried all in TSM with the Taric ultimate coming down. Mythi's invulnerability buys them huge gains in that fight. Not only did TSM take the Baron, but they take the rest of the CLG members down.
8,000 gold now the lead for TSM, and this seems to just be the start. The march down mid lane begins. Mythy will tank the turret, waiting for the minions to get up there. There's still 3 dead on the side of Counter Logic Gaming. The mid lane inhibitor will join them, and TSM has taken control of this game.
And that all started, this giant snowball, from Mike Young finding the Leaf Strike onto Stixxay and Bjergsen getting the Galio ultimate down. That pick onto the Kalista earned them so much. I'd actually like to see even the setup for it and the vision surrounding how he's able to get in there.
And that's what we wanted to see from Mike coming into this game. We talked about the pressure on him as a rookie, the pressure on him coming into this rivalry game specifically after yesterday. Let's take another look at how the Baron fight happened here.
So this was the attempt from CLG to 4v5 the Baron fight. They know they can't steal it because their jungler's not here. Bao got a huge AoE there with Alistar, but dies right after, and then the Taric ultimate coming down meant there was no recourse for CLG. Being fully committed into a fight versus invulnerable enemies is not fun.
No, typically not a winning strategy, and like I say, Mike Young setting that up, being the playmaker for his team. You talked about how important it is when you have one of those bad days as a jungler, when your smites don't land the way you want them to. You've got to be able to shake it off. You've got to be able to find that mental state that puts you right back where you need to be. And when Mike can take control of the entire game by finding that critical engage onto the enemy AD carry that gets that enemy jungler killed, that starts that Baron play and puts them in this spot, Mike has shown his ability and his resilience to do what he needs to do as this TSM jungler. Now, pushing up into the bot side, TSM with this massive lead in both tempo and gold. Can they make this game a quick one? CLG wants to do everything they can to stop it, but man, this is a hard situation to be in.
Yep, Baron buff going to do a lot here as double lines of extra minions coming in. Inhibitor's already down. Mike Young going for a little trade on a Darshan. They have to worry about the collapse.
He on the side as well. So hard to engage onto this TSM team. We talked about how this team doesn't have a ton of forward engage themselves, but man, do they have defensive tools. And when you're 10,000 gold ahead, those defensive tools are so frightening because your opponents just don't have a window to try to make a move.
TSM just trying to throw the giant bag of gold that they have as a lead as they're engaged. They're pushing down the turret, slowly but surely bulldozing their way into the CLG base. This will be inhibitor number 2 now down at 20.5 minutes.
A team that has had incredibly long games overall so far, it seems, this split. TSM trying to make a fast one out of their longtime rivals. Everybody backing in unison, going back home, potentially for the last time if they make one more push in the top lane. Baron buff about to expire, only 2 seconds left on that one. So they are going to have to do this with just the little old normal minions. They sadly don't have the gigantic ones, or happily don't have the gigantic ones if you're on the side of CLG. That is a sigh of relief that they're going to be breathing as they no longer have to deal with that. The wave clear will be much easier from this point on, but it can only get so easy when you're this far behind.
Yep, TSM having a little bit of fun in the jungle now that they're so far ahead. That's such a good feeling once you get...
Playing with blast cones?
Yeah, well, no, not playing with blast cones, but getting a 10,000 gold lead. You know, this early in the mid game there definitely feels good that you can start playing with blast cones.
I don't know, man. I like playing with blast cones. They're a funny plan. Let's see if TSM can find their way into a swift victory here. We're about to crest the 30-minute mark into the game. CLG trying to make a defense. It's practically their only option at this point. You have to hope that TSM goes too deep and overcommits to something, gives you an opportunity to punish, because if they don't, it's nigh impossible to make this happen. You can see there on your screen, Galio team win record, top lane 1-1, mid lane 3-3. This is the tiebreaker.
Well, it's looking pretty good for Galio as far as the mid lane in this one around. Bjergsen going to zone off here with the taunt AoE while they put some damage onto the turret, and there's our Woo, pretty big rail exchange.
Mike right back into the fight. They take down Darshan before he can do anything. Stixxay will save Biofrost here, but CLG, there's no way they can make any kind of a defense for this third inhib. It will drop, and TSM have sights set on the Nexus turrets. 30 minutes into this game, they're looking to potentially end. It's 4 versus 5 for 30 seconds. CLG is going to need some kind of a miracle here, but TSM does not want to give them that chance. Mike again into the back line. Bjergsen using the ultimate. It's Biofrost who may be taken down here. Mike falls first. Reignover going to be going down next. Bio also gone. The stuns are there. The damage will be 2. Stixxay dies to the winds of war, and CLG is aced in the base. TSM will make quick work of their rivals and find victory in Week 4.
What great execution after the pick on mid lane there from TSM. No hesitation. They knew they have this big advantage here with the AoE combos. They get the pick, then winning the fight afterwards with Taric ultimates as well as Baron was just too much of a swing in the mid game for CLG to come back.
The stories we were looking at that game, the redemption of Mike Young after yesterday, Biofrost's attempt at finding the victory against his old team. He fell short today. CLG just could not make anything happen. Even though Biofrost had that big 4-man pulverizing the Baron pit, it wasn't enough. And why was it not enough? Because Mike Young setting that play up, getting TSM where they needed to be, making that engage onto Stixxay, setting up what would be the kill onto Reignover. I'd say he redeemed himself for a couple of missed smites.
We can see still the hugs come through from the old members, as even though there's some nice back and forth banter in the pre-game videos, everyone still has respect and still friends.
For TSM, that's got to feel good. The team had an unexpectedly rough start to the split, going 0-2 in Week 1. Now at the end of Week 4, they've got themselves back up to that 50-50 record. 4 wins, 4 losses. For CLG, though, sitting now on a record of 3-5. Not where they expected to find themselves after 4 weeks of Spring Split.
I mean, the North American LCS has been a slugfest at the beginning here. All the teams kind of battling with their own demons, a lot of communication issues from both sides, and the power of the new organizations caught a lot of people by surprise. So having TSM and CLG fighting kind of down there in the middle of the standings has caught some people off guard, but they're definitely looking to change things and rise back up.
CLG definitely had some moments this game, though. Huhi's 2 different solo kills onto the gangplank was a lot of fun to see, but right now, it's all about TSM and their victory. Let's go ahead and send it down to Avli and TSM's top lane terror.
Thanks, guys. Hanser, congratulations on your win. Obviously a huge victory for the org, but what does this mean? What does this win mean for you?
It means that, we're just that much closer to playoffs, and that we're improving steadily. And, we had a pretty poor performance in the first few weeks, and, these wins on these good teams like 100 Thieves, CLG, they really mean that, we're coming back into our form, and in just a few more weeks, we'll be the best.
Now, usually the TSM-CLG rivalry matchup is incredibly hyped. Usually it's about the 2 teams competing for first. But do you feel that since you guys were in the middle of the standings, that it affected the rivalry at all?
Honestly, I haven't been feeling the rivalry that much since we played in the finals at Vegas, because since then CLG hasn't been in a finals team, right? So it's never been us battling versus them, and I think the rivalry's kind of died a little bit. But it's there for the historic aspect and how both teams were really top form a long time ago. But now I think they're just kind of a middle of the pack team. They have some strengths, but that's just how it is.
I'd like to hear a little bit about your relationship with Biofrost. You played against him today, obviously the first time since you guys haven't been on the team together. What's your relationship like?
I'd like to say we're good friends, but just from the way he treats me, it feels like he doesn't really like me. But I think he's a really cool person. He should open up more, but it's always nice to play against him, and we're still friends in the end.
Wonderful. Will you play against Cloud9 next week? What are your thoughts, and how are you guys going to prepare going into that match?
I honestly don't know. Their top laner, Licorice, he's had some shining moments. I feel like he'll be a pretty good opponent to play against. Rest of C9's just strong in general. Jensen's really good. Smoothie's been having a good split, so they'll definitely be a strong opponent.
Well, congratulations again on your win. And for more on that game, let's hear from the State Farm Analyst Desk.
Thank you very much, Avli. TSM moved to 500 at 4-4, while CLG dropping a game here, moved to 3-5. But really, I mean, this was a crazy, interesting game. We got a Fiora in the mid lane. We got the really interesting counter pick in the top lane with the Vladimir into the GP. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a couple team fights, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, this was a draft that my opinion fluctuated a fair amount as the game went. At first, I was like, oh, a lot of counter picks, 1-3-1, TSM, known for being a little passive and not forcing action. Great, you can just 1-3-1 the entire game. And then it's like, well, they want to snowball the Vlad or the Kalista side, but you're trying to do that versus Galio, so maybe that's not that easy. And then there's no chance you ever win a 5v5 should they break out. And if you're not getting a lead early, how are you going to stop them from engaging? So this was one that I flip-flopped a lot on, and in the end, I don't think I really liked it.
I was glad TSM finally pulled out Galio. Like,
yes.
It makes so much sense for where they're weak. Like, Bjergsen usually wins the mid lane and then sometimes has problem transitioning to the rest of the map. And even this game, because there were two split pushers on CLG, he actually couldn't help the other split pusher, and that's why we saw Darshan killing Haunter multiple times until he got Ninja Tabi and a Phantom Dancer on the Gangplank. The thing that stood out to me, though, was even after who he looked like he may be taking control of the game with the split push, is how they were still down 4,000 gold.
Right.
Like, TSM farmed so efficiently that whole game so that when they did finally win that team fight, it was over.
Right. The first team fight comes 18 minutes into the game. 3 for 2, basically every stopwatch used in the duration of this one.
And this comes right after Huhi kind of forced out some defensive stuff out of Haunter. So it looks like this could be a good fight, 5v5, but you see how hard of a time it is for them to stay in this fight. Stixxay's trying to dance around the outside, and then one at a time CLG kind of move forward. Now Stixxay's in the front, then Darshan's going to go in, and then they're kind of dealing with Haunter in the backside. So it was just a very, very scrappy fight, but at the end of the day, you essentially have 4 melee champs here against the side of TSM, which has a lot of defensive tools.
Yeah, against Galio Terror. Like, compositionally, you never want to fight. And this is a little bit of a theme, so to speak, with COG, is they're picking these things where we need to play 1-3-1, we need to split push, we need to win through this way. And when's the last time they had a better 5v5 team fight? It doesn't seem to happen.
I mean, it seems like for 30 seconds at a time, they forget their win conditions, because literally right before that, you saw Huhi doing good work in the 1v1 in the side lane. Okay, we got a small advantage there. Now let's try and fight in the mid lane. This is the kind of stuff that Huhi was doing all by his lonesome.
Right, and now this is when they're like, oh yeah, we were supposed to be 1v1ing this guy. So then they start doing this up. This is the play right before that team fight happens. So you see this good advantage. There's no reason you have to take that team fight in the mid lane. Now they're down a couple thousand gold, and he starts doing it again and actually getting the kills. But you could have done this from just a slight gold deficit as opposed to desperately trying to get back in the game, because from this point on, Huhi is never forcing this action with a minion wave next to him, so there's nothing to get after successfully getting the kill.
He's getting some gold, but at the end of the day, Haunter was a Kleptomancy Gangplank, so he was still powering up. And if Huhi's never getting an objective off the split push or pulling more people down after he gets the kill, it doesn't matter. So, like, yes, you can say Haunter shouldn't have been pushing up or he shouldn't have been taking fights with Fiora, but what was he really punished by? CLG didn't have the map in a position that they could punish.
And it was so sad because it was a good game plan out of CLG. Like you said, Bjergsen's pulled up to the top side by the Vladimir, so he's not in ult range to save Haunter. Haunter built a Maw instead of a Sterix gauge because he's like, I'm against the Vladimir. And now that is a useless item versus the Fiora who he gets matched up against. So they had good ideas, but they did not execute on them well, as well as the fact that, like, TSM, yeah, they're a little passive, but if they do force 5v5s, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Jumps 25 minutes in, Reyno's already dead because of a pick, so a 4v5 engagement here for CLG.
Yeah, and they have the Taric ultimate. You could argue that Darshan should have been in a little earlier, but Bjergsen was zoning him out with the Galio, saves his flash taunt for the actual fight. Since they had the smite, they were very patient trying to get it off, and it's essentially 5 kills in the duration of that fight. And as you can see by that goal graph, that's that giant acceleration that makes it look like a mountain, and that's where they won the game.
Yeah, Rainover gets picked off one time, and now you're forced into that 5v5. You're not 1-3-1ing anymore, and you have such a hard time playing in those situations, especially when they're coming off the back foot. You see, even though they had these kind of lane-focused counters, they never actually had a gold lead.
Yeah, and as a general point on CLG, when teams aren't necessarily communicating well, you should be playing more simplistic team compositions. At a certain point, CLG is going to kind of have to decide that because I feel like they're playing for the long term. It's like, this is the team we want to become. Right? They want to become the team that can pull off high execution, narrow win conditions because that's where they're going to eke the advantages against the best teams. But they are so sloppy right now. And with Team Liquid coming up tomorrow, there's a chance they can be 3-6.
Right.
And there's no end game if you don't make playoffs. So I'm wondering if they're going to continue to hard commit with this style, or if they're just going to play the basic stuff where you're grouping as 5 and winning team fights. It's going to be a hard decision for the coach and the team.
Right, because even if you say they executed 80% of the comp here with such narrow win conditions, 80% is not good enough against someone who can execute 60%, but with more win conditions.
And TSM consistently has been smashing all of their lanes. So it's like their fix is get that pick, force the bear, and win the game. They do a similar thing against Clutch yesterday. They're 2-0 again and actually 5-3 on the year. So I think they're way closer to figuring it all out than CLG is.
TSM continues to top the rivalry. Up next, it's a battle at the top between Team Liquid and Echo Fox. Don't go anywhere.
It's a good game.
A tale as old as time, a song as old as rhyme. TSM and CLG going head-to-head once again. That's 2 stopwatches so far, but first blood for CLG.
Face up. Player Jasper. Look closer. GB? Yeah. GB. No, Zonia. I can Zonia. Top of 4. Look for GB solo. Yeah, no, Zonia. Jack.
Mike Young will smack him down. The man on a mission is not able to stop them in time. The Baron is secured, and CLG is quickly routed. TSM with a big game-changing play. Bio also gone. The stuns are there. The damage will be 2. 6A dies to the winds of war, and CLG is aced in the face. TSM will make quick work of their rival and find victory in Week 4.